Hello everyone and welcome to another in my constructed video series. This is Brian Kibler with StarCityGames.com and we're continuing our adventures in Constellation this week. I was playing around with the junk Constellation deck that I played in my last couple videos, and I sort of had the realization that I wasn't super happy with the white in the deck. The only thing that white was offering me was Banishing Light and Elspeth in the main deck, and as I talked about in my last video in my article, I wasn't really happy with Banishing Light. In a format where there's a lot of Abrupt Decays and Detention Spheres and the like, Banishing Light just isn't a reliable removal spell, and I kind of wanted to move away from that. That sort of led me to the realization that Elspeth is the only white card in the deck, and while Elspeth is powerful, it can be situationally not that good if you're the board is such that you can't really afford to play Elspeth. It's also just a pretty high cost to just have a color in your deck just for Elspeth. And again, there's lots of things that can actually remove Elspeth. There's Hero's Downfalls. There's again Detention Spheres and such. And it's a powerful card, but I wanted to explore other options because if I'm basically playing white for this one color, or rather white for this one card, I want to see, well, what are the other options I have? And one of the places where I found that the Constellation deck was fairly weak was against Esper decks, against control decks, blue-white, Esper, that sort of thing. And I was exploring the possibilities of how can I shore up that matchup. And white didn't really offer a ton. White had the Obsidian plan, which is okay, but I don't think it's fantastic. It's possible that it ends up being better than some of the other options, but I wanted to explore other things. I tried just a straight Golgari deck. The idea being that I would have more lands that enter the battlefield untapped. I would have Primeval Bounty, as we see here, rather than Elspeth. Primeval Bounty is an incredibly powerful card. It is actually the best card in your deck against Mono Black. If you resolve a Primeval Bounty, it's extremely difficult for them to win. Their deck can't actually remove it from play. And you can get so much value off of everything you do. Primeval Bounty has tons of powerful synergies. Obviously, it's an enchantment which triggers your Constellation. It also works incredibly well with Mana Bloom. Mana Bloom is obviously very powerful with Eidolon of Blossoms, but with Primeval Bounty, it actually gives you a reusable way to trigger the non-creature spell effect, which can load up the creatures that you have in the battlefield. So this is really powerful interaction, and also it's very powerful against any deck that's actually trying to kill you with damage. Anything that's trying to burn you out, just being able to gain life off of Primeval Bounty is very powerful. I actually played the Golgari version of the deck on my weekly stream. For those of you who aren't aware, I have a stream show on Tuesdays at 10 a.m. On Pacific time called BMK Gaming Live, where I play live and interact with the chat and things like that. You should check it out if you haven't. You can find links to that at my website, bmkgaming.com, as well as the videos of that. But one of the things, if you look at the videos from this week, or I guess it'll be last week by the time you see this, you'll see that I played the Golgari Constellation deck quite a bit, and I struggled a lot with control. And I wanted to find a way to improve the sort of core strategy here against control. And the big problem that you have is that you're playing a deck that is reliant on these powerful synergies, the Eidolon of Blossoms and, Eidolon of Blossoms is basically the best card in your deck against them. Actually, it's probably Underworld Connections, but the sort of thing that your deck is built around doing is easily disrupted by what their deck is intended to do. And your deck is intended to exchange resources and get these little edges, and their deck is intended to kill your stuff and then Revelation. So it's very difficult for this deck to beat Sphinx's Revelation. You don't put on a ton of pressure, and your incremental advantage stuff, you can play a bunch of discard, like I was playing 5 different discard spells on my sideboard, and still would just kind of make them discard, then eventually run out of action, they just draw Revelation and win. So that's why I'm exploring Jund. The big reason that I'm trying out Jund is this card, Slaughter Games. Slaughter Games has seen a reasonable amount of play in Standard to this point. Not a ton, but a decent amount, specifically mostly against Sphinx's Revelation. And this is the sort of deck that, I have enough value cards that if I can line up my removal spells against your removal spells, my discard against your answers, and get ahead with Connections or Eidolon or whatever, and if you can't Revelation, I feel like I should be able to win. So that's what's going on here. And because my splash is just Slaughter Games and Sire, I actually have a very light mana base for red. I only have 3 Pain Lands and 4 Temples to go along with Caryatid and Mana Bloom. I actually board out some number of Caryatids in those matchups because it's vulnerable to Supreme Verdict. But I have enough sources to be able to cast Slaughter Games even without the Caryatids in my deck, that I think that I can still have a lighter touch of Pain Lands in my deck than I had with the white version, as well as I guess I have the same number of lands that come into play tapped or enter the battlefield tapped. But this version is a little heavier in removal. I have 3 decays and 4 downfalls. The previous version had, I guess it actually had a similar amount of removal because it had 1 less decay, 1 less downfall, and it had 2 banishing lights. So a lot of what's going on in the main deck is actually very similar, but the key difference here is in the sideboard and with Slaughter Games and Sire of Insanity. So the plan against control decks is to bring in the Thoughtseizes, Charms, Slaughter Games, Sire, and Mutavault. Mutavault coming in because it gives you an extra mana source when you take out Caryatid, as well as providing you just with a body that can attack Planeswalkers and such. And trying to just beat them by Slaughter Gamesing their specifically Revelation and potentially other key cards in order to be able to actually win those attrition-based games, which are otherwise pretty much impossible to beat someone who has Revelation in their deck. So the way that the deck interacts with the rest of the field is pretty similar, but the key here is the cards that are aimed at beating Esper, and I think that is going to be a or blue-white. I think those are important decks to be able to handle, and I think this deck is potentially better set up for it than the previous versions, and I certainly want to give it a shot. So that's what we're doing today. We're going to be putting this deck through its first paces. I literally have not played a game with this deck so far. I mean, I've obviously played quite a few games with the overall shell that's going on here, but with the specific plan I have going on here with the Jund mana base and the red cards in the sideboard, that's all new. So we're going to be in uncharted territory right now, and we'll see how it goes. So let's head into the matches, and maybe we'll see how see these things get some jobs done. So here we go.